Hey guys, Retronaut88 here. I wanted to show you some stuff that I've got going on with my Arcade1 cabinets. So this is my Asteroids, and if you like me, you got your Asteroids home. Similar experience probably with a 12 and 1, but me, I have Asteroids, and you get home, and of course the spinner is just, I mean, I love you guys, Arcade1Up, but that spinner was garbage, and they know it. They're working on a replacement, but the one that came with it was terrible. And I really wanted to come up with an alternate spinner. A lot of people have talked about the one from Ultimarc. There's also one from Groovy Gamer, and I really like that one. And that's actually what this is. This is not the Ultimarc spinner. This is the Groovy Gamer spinner. And if you look, oh boy, it's going to be hard to actually see any movement on this thing unless I get it very close. But basically, as you spin this thing, because it doesn't have any markings on it, but as you spin this thing around, it's see, there you go. Oh yeah, there you go. See, there's a little hole right there. So you can watch it go around and watch. It just keeps going and going and going and going. This thing is great. It's awesome. This has the weight. This is, I believe, I want to say this is the larger of the two weights that they offer. But it just keeps the thing spinning and spinning and spinning. It's really great. You can actually tighten it down too, because there's a felt ring up here, right there, and you can actually tighten it down and kind of control, how much it will free spin. I have mine free spinning, just free spinning. If you tighten this down a bit, you can actually get it to where it's not going to spin around forever. It's going to stop after a few rotations. So you can play around with it, and they have a ton of different tops. And one of the interesting things that they have is they offer a top that looks like the top from Tron, and they also offer a top that has up and down action if you want to play Discs of Tron, which you may not even realize this because I actually forgot myself. But when you get into the later levels of Discs of Tron, you can you can actually pull and push the spinner to control the up down action of the shield in the background. So that's another option. But anyway, these things are cool, and they actually go into the same button, size buttonhole, or the same size hole as push buttons do. So you can put it in any, you can basically mount it in any push button hole, and use the same hole saw you would use for push buttons. So I got this. I thought, yeah, this is great. Gonna definitely use this. But as you probably know, the hole for the spinner that comes with this cabinet is actually much bigger. And I'm like, well, what am I gonna do with that? And that's when it hit me. Instead of mounting my spinner here, I can mount it on this side. And you know what? This is a big blank area, because if you notice, I mean, they've got the spinner over here, and then that same area here is blank. So it actually balances quite nicely if you just mount the spinner there. Of course, it would go like down into the cabinet, but so it balances quite nicely. It's like, okay, there's one control there, one control there, and then what I'm doing here, as you can see, is I'm using this area for a joystick. This is a flight stick type joystick, the kind, similar to what you would see in Tron. And actually, let me think. Did I get this from Ultimarc? Actually, I think I got this off of eBay. It's exactly the same one that they have on Ultimarc. Anyway, they also make a cover that you can use, that you can replace this with, that you can order from Ultimarc, that is exactly like the one from Tron. I'm probably not going to go that direction because the thing is kind of huge. And actually, I think this small joystick is perfect for this size cabinet. And the black and red is sort of perfect. So I'm just probably going to leave that one there, because I think a larger one might be a little unwieldy on this tiny cabinet. But who knows? So that was my solution. And I wanted to share that with you guys because I think it's pretty cool. This ends up, there's a little cover, the dust cover here, the dust washer ends up covering up that hole perfectly. And I know it's dark in here, but you can't, it doesn't really show the hole that was there. So it ends up being kind of perfect. for that size hole that was made by the old spinner. It's perfect. I couldn't have planned that better. And yeah, the spinner is actually on this side with Tempest, but if you go look at a Tron, I believe Tron, it's on the right side. And anyway, it feels pretty good to have the joystick in the right hand, you know, and then the spinner over here. And I don't really care what side the spinner's on for games like Tempest or Breakout. So that was my solution. I think it's pretty cool. I haven't gotten to try it yet, but I obviously haven't put this in yet. But that's kind of what I came up with. And it's for the buttons. Okay, so I did a few things here. I didn't like the white buttons here. Now, I don't know why they went with white buttons, honestly. If you go check out, like, Google Asteroids Arcade, right? And check out a real Asteroids Arcade. There's two things you'll notice that are a little weird. First of all, it does not have just a big black blank bezel. It actually had this really cool kind of sunken in 3D cardboard cutout weird thing, but it had like asteroids, you know, and it was really cool. If you go to arcadegraphics.com, and I'm going to drop a link in the bucket, but he just started making bezels for this. He had a bezel that kind of had this artwork, the artwork from the sides and from the front, kind of this art around here, and that was pretty cool. But he just came out with a second, like, alternate bezel that is the artwork from that cardboard cutout from the original arcade. So check that out. It is sweet. So that's the bezel. I'm going to go ahead and get that very soon. But also, the other thing that you're going to notice is that as awesome as this layout is, and it's great, it is exactly like the arcade, these were actually volcano buttons. And if you remember, volcano buttons were like a cone-shaped button with a little, like, black cone-shaped button with a little red tip at the top. And it's the same as the actual launch buttons, the action buttons from Missile Command were also volcano buttons. But the Player 1, Player 2 on Asteroids were volcano buttons. And so I mean, yeah, you can go get volcano buttons. They're not easy to find. I don't think they actually make them anymore. People are making just the volcano piece, but the switch itself, I don't think anyone's making those. I don't know, but they're not that easy to come by. So what I did is I just replaced these with a couple of, you know, black regular switch buttons, because to me it just kind of represents the look of Asteroids a little better. It didn't have, you know, instead of more white buttons up here, it's these black buttons that kind of feel, you know, more like the black volcano buttons. Alternatively, you could get, you know, red buttons with little, red, you know, center buttons with black ring. But I thought that was a little too fancy and obvious. I just wanted black buttons that kind of match the look, the basic look. But these buttons are really what I want to talk about. These are not the buttons that came with Arcade1Up. Here's the thing. A lot of people have replaced a lot of these buttons, you know, with like the kind of buttons you would have in a Street Fighter 2, like Happ controls, and that's cool. That's cool. Those are robust buttons. But for me, it's about these classics, and I'm talking about like Pac-Man, Galaga, Asteroids, Centipede, the classics that came out in this collection, these collections. They did not have clicky micro switch push buttons. They didn't have that. They had this whole other thing called leaf switches, which are actually not that easy to come by anymore. They're certainly not as readily available all over Amazon or anything. And if you look around on eBay, it's like you find a bunch of used ones. You can find them like at Ultimarc and places like that, but they're not particularly cheap if you want to put together, you know, it's not too bad if you only get a couple, but it can get it. Yeah, they're kind of a pain. And to get enough that you need in the correct colors, I mean, the availability seems to be a bit, So I searched around a lot for an alternative, and I found one. And it's this. This is the gold leaf button from Ultimarc, and I'm going to show you the difference. This is an Arcade1Up button. This came out of an Arcade1Up. It was one of these, and it has a little micro switch in there, and it goes like this. Hear that? Cool. Yeah. Whatever. Little clicky. Whatever. This does not look like a leaf switch. It does not. However, looks can be deceiving. First of all, this is cool because the gold leaf buttons come all one piece. Look at that. It's got everything. Now, if you're familiar with leaf switch buttons, you know that they are a pain. There are like 3 different components that you have to get. You know, this ring that goes on it, and then you have to get the micro switch, and then you have to get the button itself, and it's like all these different pieces. And anyway, this is a one-piece button that is like, I don't know, $250, $350, you know, something like that. It's cheap. It's cheap. And here is what the actuator sounds like. Don't turn your volume up. You're still not going to hear the click. There's literally no click with these at all. What it is obviously it's not a leaf in there, but it is a spring inside. I've taken one apart just to check it out. It has a spring inside, and it makes contact at the bottom, and so it mimics the mechanics of a leaf switch without having to actually have a leaf switch. So if you're used to, like, say, Galaga, right? You know, say you spent a lot of time playing Galaga, and you remember that feeling of you know, pumping those blasts, you know, toward the, you know, pumping, just blasting those 3 blasts at a time, right? And they were not clicky. It was like you could just kind of push the button as fast as you could move. You weren't waiting for any kind of clicky actuator to pop down and spring back up. You know, that's not what Galaga sounds like. You know, Galaga, you hear the blast, you hear the laser blasts, and that's it, because you're just doing this. And it has a very different feel to it. Tactilely speaking, you know, it has a very different sort of tactile feel to it than these clicky buttons from later games like Street Fighter that had, you know, this is not a real Happ control button, of course, but it's designed to mimic that type of micro switch. It's a cheaper version of it. And this is what so this is what all of these classic games sound like. And if you played, you know, Asteroids again, you know, you remember it's just like you just have that very soft depression of the button and the zap of the laser, and that's it. There's no click. And so I love these things. If you want to have your like classic Asteroids and Pac-Man and Galaga, and well, of course Pac-Man just has the player buttons, but Centipede, you want these games to sound and feel like the originals, and you're around then and you remember what this is supposed to feel like and sound like, grab these. They're cheap. They're really cheap. I mean, I grabbed enough for all of my games for, you know, not very much money. So that's my my recommendation. I have here the 2 yellow play or player 1, player 2 buttons for Galaga, and the fire button for Galaga. So I haven't put together my Galaga yet, but that's where those are going to go. And this is my setup that I will have pretty soon for Asteroids. So I will be back with Asteroids. I'm going to come back to this once I've gotten this installed, once I've gotten the guts modded, of course, and once I've gotten so that I can use the joystick and all this stuff. And once I have, I'm going to get the new bezel and probably the new kick plate that has the side art. One of the things I love about that, and be sure to check that out too if you go check out Arcade Graphics, is that they have front panel graphics that replace all this stuff. And it's particularly cool if you're going to have several of these lined up side by side and you're not going to see the side art. You know, you're not seeing the side art. Instead, you're basically putting the art on the front so that you can actually see it. That's cool for me. I'm excited about that. So anyway, that's it for now, and I will be back soon to talk about Pac-Man. Peace.